Hi, my name is Dori. I am an alcoholic. Thank you for inviting me into your space, and I'm honored to be here. And my sobriety date is June 11th, 2011, and it didn't take me long to figure out what I would share about as a topic today, considering that today is Cinco de Mayo. It's May 5th. None of you would know what that means to me at this point in your world with me. It is a pretty significant date for me. 10 years ago on Cinco de Mayo, all I cared about was attaining the love of a man I wanted. That was it. I didn't care about my kids. I didn't care about my job. I didn't care about my life. All I wanted was him. And so with that, what occurred to me, because this brought me to tears when I read it in my home group the other night. So I'm gonna read it real quick. It's not that long. It's the long form of Tradition 5 in honor of the month of May. Each Alcoholics Anonymous group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. The reason that brought me to tears was because it's really easy for me to remember to come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and carry the message to another alcoholic. It's really easy for me to remember that when I'm working with one of my sponsees. It's very easy for me to remember that when I'm calling upon my sponsor. Basically, the point I'm getting at for me is that it doesn't take much for me to know where I'm at and appreciate that I'm here to carry the message when I'm in an event or at an event or something related to Alcoholics Anonymous. But, no buts. The 12th step in terms of working with others, I need to be able to take this program, take what I've gotten from the steps, taking what I've gotten from the traditions, and be sure that I'm carrying that message outside to the rest of the world. Not necessarily going preach from corners or try to bang some alcoholic with the big book on their head outside of AA. Like, hey, come with me. It's not what I'm talking about. But I may very well be the only example of a big book or the program or what it looks like to be a sober woman with coming up on 10 years. I may be the only example of that someone gets to see someday. And so I'm not perfect at that. And the reason it brought me to tears is because I can apply these principles in almost everything in my life. And going back to the Cinco de Mayo thing and the relationships thing, I was one of those alcoholics, and I'm not alone in this. I needed a seriously major overhauling when it came to the topic of sex, when it came to the topic of relationships. In any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, should I be given the opportunity and honor of speaking, I like to say out loud to any alcoholic sitting within hearing distance of me that if you have anything related to sex that's an issue for you, I am a safe person for you to come to. I will not shy away from it. It doesn't make me cringe. It's not a topic I can't talk about. I'm not necessarily going to throw it in your face. I've actually learned how to not do that. But that's as much as I can say about that, or will, because it is a topic for some people that gets very cringy and uncomfortable. However, going back to Cinco de Mayo and my life today, and what Tradition 5 looks like. What does that look like for me in my life today? So as I said, it's easy for me to remember to do it here. In personal relationships, when I so choose to even embark into that world, which is, sometimes avoidance for me, is the safest answer when it comes to something that I am struggling with or challenged by. Avoidance of alcohol was my first step. That was my first thing to any of this, any of my sobriety, any of my recovery today had to come from a complete, utter avoidance of it. I did get to a place, and I am at a place in my recovery where I can be around it. I'm not afraid of being around it. I have no fear about going on a 12-step call. I will make sure I have someone with me if I can, God willing. I know better than to do one of those alone. But because I have no fear of being around it, in my public world outside of AA, I can go to an event, I can go to a concert, I can go to a this or I can go to a that, and I have good reason to be there. And I could easily co-sign my bullshit and tell all of you that I'm so spiritually rock solid there. And I am when it comes to the drink part. I have a spiritual relationship with a God today that I know, I trust, keeps me from that for me. But what I failed to do, and I get to forgive myself for, is I fail to sometimes recognize in a outside of a setting when I'm sitting with an alcoholic. And part of that, I think, for me comes from, I don't want to go around diagnosing people. It is not my job to tell someone else, you have a problem. You're an alcoholic. That is not okay. Page 103 of the big book tells me, as the potential sponsor or the potential person working with people, page 103 in the big book at the end of chapter 5 tells me exactly what not to do, which is good. It's good. I don't go to alcoholics drinking as a witch burner. I don't go to them trying to reform. I don't go to them, about the alcohol or being bitter or mean about it. But what I can often fail to do with that is not pay attention or notice that someone I may be potentially getting into a relationship with, for example, has a problem. And even if I do know they have a problem, or if I even do know they see the problem, I can often try to paint that red flag green. And if it's not green enough, I add an extra coat. So what does that have to do with Tradition 5? For me, that is my purpose. My purpose in my entire existence of living and breathing and being on this side of the dirt, alive and well as an alcoholic with recovery, is to be responsible to other alcoholics, not just when they reach out. That's okay. That's good. That's a good practice. I love the responsibility prayer, and as a GSR and as someone who works at service levels of different natures, it's important for me to know that when someone reaches out, I want the hand of AA to be there, and I want to do what I can for that. But I also have to I need to remind myself to also make sure that I'm a responsible hand for someone, even if they're not reaching out. I'm not going to go around diagnosing them, and I'm not suggesting any of you do. I don't know where I'm at on time. Actually, I do, 7 minutes or so, because I'm one of those people. I know you guys have a timekeeper, but I will talk forever. Like, I will totally take you hostage and never leave. So I'm glad timers exist. So I know I'm coming up on that mark. So I had a goddaughter. I call the women, not the women I sponsor, but I call some of the women that I get to mentor or be a mother to, or a godmother to, or a spiritual guru to. Goddaughter was an easy way to identify that distinction. And she told me this week that that people don't, that if I feel, I'm all over the place with this. How did she word it? I don't want to misquote her. She said that if I thought people don't give a fuck about me, maybe I should show them that I give a fuck about them. And I apologize for language, but that's how she said it. And it's important. Sometimes the F word is the only emphasis that matters, really, or it makes the emphasis matter. And I was furious. I hadn't been that furious in a long time, because I am one of those people that loves first. I'm going to love you before I even get to know you. You don't even have to tell me hi. That's just me. And I was angry by it. But what she meant was, I rarely show people who I really am. I rarely let them in. I show them this external me. And why I'm pointing that out, because I'm almost to 9 minutes, is I haven't said anything to you really about anything personal other than maybe the guy thing or dating thing. Probably because I'm 51 years old and there's no way in a 15-minute segment I could ever tell you who I am other than what's important. I'm an alcoholic that knows today that if I drink, dying is not the worst thing that can happen to me. And the only reason I know that is because I've sat in the meetings with men and women share and expose their soul about something horrendous that happened to them during a relapse or during their drinking. I've heard my own stories of what I did, my own actions of what I did, the things that I don't shy away from them, and I've done all the work on it. Most of the work. I still have healing to do. The big one that comes from what I've done in my work today, alive and breathing in my life, is that first Alcoholics Anonymous gave me the willingness to even want to know how to have any kind of boundaries or standards for myself as a female, as a woman. Because when I got here, it didn't matter. If I wanted it, and I was going to get it, much like my booze. today I have those standards and I have those boundaries and I have those things that I want as ideals for myself in my life, personal relationships, going back to dating, and Tradition 5 and how that ties into it for me as a sober woman, trying to date in a world where some people are still drinking, some are in the room, some aren't. The thing that was why this conversation with my goddaughter was important was because I have these boundaries now, and I have these things that I know make me feel safe, that I know I need to be safe, but I don't know how to state those to other people kindly. And if that makes, I'm one of those people, it's either black or white. There's very little in the middle. I didn't know how to state a boundary to anyone, at all. So now that I know how, and I'm learning how, now I have to learn how to not literally, become the see you next Tuesday girl to someone when they're overstepping that boundary. Cause that's what I do. That's what I'm doing now. And it all ties into where I'm at in my recovery. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be over and over and over again. I've had people with decades and decades of recovery tell me that you don't really reach emotional sobriety until that first decade mark. And I'm getting there. I'm getting closer. Not quite perfect, but I'm getting closer. And so it's over and over and over again. One of the favorite things that I get to have in my life today and share with you is that this is progress, not perfection. Man, if I hadn't stopped buying into the need or necessity for perfection, I would have probably drank and died a long time ago. Thank God I can completely make a mistake, utterly mess it up still. And I get to do something about it today. I get to get into a solution for it today. I get to own it. Because not owning my bullshit, that also is another thing that would have killed me a long time ago. Not only own it, but do something about it. And for me, when I start or embroach or go into a new phase of my recovery, a new phase of this journey, I talk about it. And I talk about it because the old timers in the big book and anyone who has been here longer than me, and even some of the people that haven't, remind me of the same thing. I'm only as sick as my secrets. I'm only going to be as crazy as what I try to walk around with without getting it out. And ironically, the fifth step is my answer to that. My fifth step is my answer to the insanity staying between my ears. And the month of 5, I don't know, the 5 thing today has a big significance in my life. 5. One of the last things I'll go into and share about Tradition 5 is one of the ways that my former sponsor that took me through the traditions with actual written tradition workshop work, I had to write them out first person. Because traditions, when I would hear them in meetings or when people would talk about them, I couldn't really relate. They bored me. I was like, I'm not there yet, man. I don't want to talk about that. But today I know that I have but one primary purpose. One. And that is to carry the message to an alcoholic who still suffers. And when for me, always try to remind myself the alcoholic still suffering isn't necessarily the one drinking. Sometimes it's the sober, clean alcoholic sitting right next to me. And sometimes I'm terrible at it. Sometimes I'm in my own self-pity. I'm in my own issues. I'm in my own life. I'm in my own self-centeredness. And I'm not always there like I would want to be, attain to be. I'm not always that way. And that's okay. That's okay. Because this old timer named Gary, who's no longer with us, he got to die a sober, clean man. One of my favorite quotes of his, and I have it written down and I'll probably never forget it, is he said, on any given day in Alcoholics Anonymous as a sober alcoholic, I'm only going to be as good as one thing, as good as being human. That's it. It's never going to be better. I'm never going to be it's never going to be attainable for me to be a god or a saint, as it says in chapter 5. I will never be better than human. That's what I am. I'm human. I am a human having a spiritual experience in life. I'm trying, and I get to progress at it. So I love timing myself. I'm going to wrap it up there. And again, extend my gratitude for being honored to come here and share my experience, strength, and hope. And I hope that someone somewhere heard something that makes you choose life today. And I'm not just talking about life as opposed to death. I'm talking about life. Smile, hope, dream, be happy, dance, do whatever you got to do to feel alive today, because I don't ever want to go back to a place of numb, non-feeling, non-existence, anything like that. I never want to go back to a world or a life or a feeling where I was my greatest hitman and I had a death wish for myself. That I don't have anymore. I don't have that obsession of the mind towards that anymore. And I thank Alcoholics Anonymous for that, and all of you. Thank you so much for letting me share.